Some people are tested long before anyone notices their strength. Emily Carter repeated those words silently as cold rain soaked through her jacket and dampened the edges of the folder she carried against her chest. The bus she depended on every morning had broken down nearly 3 miles from downtown, and with only 45 minutes until her interview, she had been forced to make a choice. She could turn around and go home, or she could keep walking through the storm. For Emily, there was never really a choice. Her 8-year-old son, Liam, was counting on her. Every utility bill sitting on her kitchen counter was counting on her. The rent due next week was counting on her. So she lowered her head against the wind and continued forward. The sidewalks were crowded with people rushing beneath umbrellas, but Emily had none. Her old shoes absorbed water with every step, and by the time the office building finally appeared ahead of her, she looked as though she had walked through a river rather than a city street. Yet she checked the time and allowed herself a small smile. She was still going to make it. Several floors above the entrance, Daniel Brooks stood near the large window of his office reviewing notes before an executive meeting. As chief executive officer of one of the fastest-growing companies in the region, his mornings rarely allowed distractions. Yet something outside caught his attention. A woman was hurrying toward the building through the heavy rain. Most people entered quickly and disappeared into the lobby. She was different. Her clothes were soaked, her hair clung to her face, and she looked exhausted. Yet there was determination in every step. Daniel watched as she paused briefly at the entrance, straightened her posture, and took a deep breath before walking inside. He found himself unexpectedly curious. Downstairs, Emily entered the lobby, trying not to draw attention to her appearance. The receptionist offered a sympathetic smile and handed her a few paper towels. Emily thanked her and carefully dried her hands before checking in for the interview. She could feel nervousness building inside her, but she refused to let circumstances define her first impression. 20 minutes later, she sat in a conference room answering questions from a hiring manager and 2 department supervisors. Some answers came easily, others did not. She spoke honestly about her experience, her willingness to learn, and the responsibility that had shaped her life as a single mother. She never asked for sympathy. She simply explained who she was. What Emily did not know was that Daniel had quietly requested a copy of the interview schedule after seeing her arrive. During a break between meetings, he reviewed the candidate list and discovered her name. Something about her persistence reminded him of someone from his own past, someone who had worked hard without expecting anyone to rescue them. Meanwhile, Emily finished the interview and thanked everyone for their time. As she left the building, the rain had finally begun to slow. She stood outside for a moment looking at the gray sky. She had no idea whether she would get the job. She only knew that she had done everything she could. Several floors above, Daniel watched her walk away. Most candidates were forgotten within minutes. For some reason, he knew this one would not be. Emily stepped out of the building and felt the drizzle on her face as she hurried toward the parking garage. Her thoughts were consumed with the interview she had just completed, replaying her answers and wondering if they had seen her determination through the exhaustion and soaked clothing. She adjusted her jacket, hoping it would dry before she drove home to Liam, her son, who waited with homework spread across the kitchen table. The streets glistened from the rain, reflecting the city lights and making her cautious as she navigated puddles and slipping sidewalks. Inside the building, Daniel Brooks returned to his office but could not stop thinking about the woman he had seen enter earlier. Her persistence, the way she carried herself despite the storm, lingered in his mind. He made a mental note to follow up on her application, curious about the blend of resilience and quiet strength that had caught his attention so unexpectedly. Meanwhile, Emily unlocked her car, shivering slightly from the wetness, and glanced at the city skyline. She knew this job could mean stability, not just for herself but for her children, and she felt a mix of hope and anxiety. Driving home, she rehearsed answers to potential follow-up questions, imagining scenarios where her honesty and experience would shine. Across town, Daniel's assistant left a note on his desk reminding him of afternoon meetings, but he paused, reviewing the interview schedule to locate her name. The way she had managed to present herself calmly under pressure and the subtle confidence she exuded made him reconsider the impact of first impressions and the value of determination that did not rely on privilege. Emily arrived home, greeted by Liam's wide smile and the smell of his favorite dinner simmering on the stove. She hung her jacket, wringing out the moisture, and listened to Liam recount his day at school, reminding herself that no matter the outcome, she had shown strength, responsibility, and resilience. Later, as she tucked him into bed, she allowed herself a brief moment to breathe, thinking about the possibility that someone had noticed her efforts, that perhaps her dedication had not gone unseen. Daniel, finishing his own day, gazed out the office window at the setting sun, the city slowly quieting. He thought about the candidate who had arrived in the rain, the way she had managed challenges with poise, and realized that sometimes the most impressive qualities are not spoken aloud but demonstrated through quiet action. Emily, meanwhile, reviewed emails, unaware that one of them might soon bring unexpected news, and felt the weight of anticipation, hope, and the quiet satisfaction of having faced a challenge head-on. 3 days passed before the email finally arrived. Emily opened her inbox while sitting at the small kitchen table after Liam had gone to bed. For a moment, she simply stared at the message subject line, afraid to hope too much. Then she clicked it open. Her eyes widened. She had been offered the position. Relief washed over her so quickly that she covered her mouth to stop herself from crying. The salary was not extraordinary, but it was enough to create stability, enough to stop worrying about every unexpected expense, enough to allow her son a future with fewer sacrifices. Emily leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. For the first time in months, she felt as though life might finally be moving in the right direction. The following Monday, she arrived at the office building 30 minutes early. This time the sky was clear and sunlight reflected from the glass exterior. She wore her best professional outfit, carefully pressed the night before, and carried a notebook filled with goals and reminders. As she stepped into the lobby, she felt nervous but determined. She had worked too hard to let fear control her now. Upstairs, Daniel Brooks reviewed reports during an executive meeting when one of the department managers mentioned that the new hire had started that morning. Daniel immediately recognized the name. Emily Carter. He kept his expression neutral, but a small sense of satisfaction settled over him. He believed the company had made the right decision. Throughout her first week, Emily focused entirely on learning. She arrived early, stayed organized, and treated every task with care. While some new employees spent breaks scrolling through their phones, Emily often used the time to study procedures and training materials. She understood that opportunities were valuable and never assumed they would last forever. Her dedication quickly caught the attention of several coworkers. What Emily did not realize was that Daniel occasionally received informal updates about new employees from department heads. Again and again, her name appeared, not because she was trying to impress anyone, but because she consistently worked hard and treated people with respect. One afternoon, as Emily prepared to leave for the day, her phone rang. It was Liam's school. Her heart immediately tightened. Fortunately, there was no emergency. Liam had simply forgotten his backpack and needed help with a project due the next morning. Emily smiled with relief and promised she would handle it. After ending the call, she gathered her things and hurried toward the elevator. A few moments later, she noticed an older employee struggling with several heavy file boxes near the hallway. Despite being eager to leave, Emily stopped and offered assistance. Together, they carried the materials to a storage room. The employee thanked her repeatedly. Emily simply smiled and wished her a good evening. From the opposite side of the corridor, Daniel happened to witness the entire interaction. Emily never saw him. She had no idea anyone was watching. Yet Daniel noticed something important. She helped without hesitation. She did not do it for recognition. She did not know anyone important was nearby. She simply saw someone who needed assistance and responded. As Emily drove home that evening, she thought only about Liam and the school project waiting on the kitchen table. Meanwhile, Daniel remained standing in the hallway for a moment longer. More and more, he found himself wondering about the woman who had walked through the rain. The job interview had ended days ago, yet his curiosity had only grown stronger. And somewhere deep inside, he sensed that Emily's story was far more remarkable than anyone in the office realized. By the end of her first month at the company, Emily had settled into a routine that felt both exhausting and rewarding. Every morning began before sunrise. She prepared breakfast for Liam, helped him get ready for school, and then drove across town to the office. Every evening was filled with homework, laundry, grocery lists, and careful budgeting. The schedule left little room for rest, but Emily never complained. She had spent years learning how to carry responsibility without expecting recognition. At work, her reputation continued to grow. Coworkers appreciated her reliability because she followed through on every commitment she made. Managers noticed that she completed assignments carefully and asked thoughtful questions instead of pretending to know everything. What made Emily different was not extraordinary talent. It was consistency. She treated every task as if it mattered. One Tuesday morning, a small situation arose that nobody realized would become important. The company cafeteria was crowded, and several employees were rushing to prepare for a major client presentation. A new intern accidentally spilled coffee across a stack of printed reports and looked completely overwhelmed. Most people were too busy to stop. Emily immediately walked over, helped organize replacement materials, and reassured the young employee that mistakes happened. The problem was solved within minutes. To Emily, it was a simple act of kindness. She never mentioned it again. What she did not know was that Daniel happened to hear about the incident later that afternoon. He had not instructed anyone to observe her. In fact, he was beginning to find the constant positive feedback unusual. Every department seemed to have a story about Emily helping someone, solving a problem, or staying late to make sure a project was completed correctly. Daniel became increasingly curious. During a leadership meeting, he casually asked one manager about her performance. The answer was immediate. "She is one of the most dependable people we have hired this year." Another manager agreed. "People trust her." Those two words remained with Daniel long after the meeting ended. People trust her. In his experience, trust was far more valuable than impressive resumes or polished presentations. Later that week, Emily received an unexpected request to assist with a cross-department project. The assignment was challenging and involved coordinating information from several teams. Although she felt nervous, she accepted without hesitation. She spent evenings reviewing materials after Liam went to sleep and arrived early each morning to prepare. The additional workload was difficult, but she viewed it as an opportunity rather than a burden. One evening, while organizing documents in a conference room, Emily noticed a framed photograph hanging near the executive offices. The image showed Daniel standing beside employees during a company volunteer event. For a moment, she paused. She recognized him immediately as the chief executive officer. Although she had occasionally seen him from a distance, they had never formally met. Emily simply admired the photograph for a second before returning to work. Meanwhile, Daniel stood inside his office unaware that she had been just outside the door. Looking through performance summaries, he noticed her name again. More than once, he considered introducing himself. Yet something held him back. He wanted to understand who Emily Carter truly was when nobody important was watching. What neither of them realized was that circumstances were already moving them toward a conversation that would change both of their lives far more than either could imagine. The first real challenge arrived on a Thursday evening when Emily received a call from Liam's school nurse just as she was preparing to leave the office. Her son was not seriously ill, but he had developed a fever and needed to be picked up immediately. Emily glanced at the clock and felt her stomach tighten. The cross-department project she had been working on for weeks was due the following morning, and several final reports still required review. For a moment, she stood completely still, caught between two responsibilities that both mattered deeply. Then she made the only choice she could. Liam came first. She quickly informed her supervisor, gathered her things, and drove to the school. During the ride home, Liam rested quietly in the passenger seat while Emily mentally reorganized her entire evening. After making him soup, checking his temperature, and helping him settle comfortably on the couch, she opened her laptop at the kitchen table. The project still needed to be finished. Outside, darkness settled over the neighborhood. Inside, Emily moved between work documents and caring for her son. Every hour she checked on him before returning to spreadsheets, reports, and presentation materials. By midnight, exhaustion weighed heavily on her shoulders. Yet she continued. The next morning, after only a few hours of sleep, Emily delivered the completed project before the deadline. She never mentioned the difficult night. She simply returned to work and focused on her responsibilities. What she did not realize was that her supervisor was fully aware of what had happened. Later that afternoon, during a management discussion, the project leader praised Emily's performance. "Most people would have asked for an extension," he said. "She handled everything professionally." Daniel happened to be attending the meeting. Once again, Emily's name surfaced. Once again, the praise had nothing to do with ambition or office politics. It was simply a reflection of character. After the meeting ended, Daniel found himself thinking about her situation. He knew she was raising a child alone. Human resources files contained only limited information, but even that was enough to reveal a demanding reality. Work, parenting, financial responsibilities, and daily challenges all rested on one person's shoulders. Yet every report described the same qualities: reliable, respectful, consistent. That evening, Daniel stayed late at the office reviewing documents. As he walked through a nearly empty floor, he noticed a light still glowing in one of the conference rooms. Curious, he glanced inside. Emily sat alone reviewing project notes. She looked tired, very tired, yet she remained focused. Daniel quietly stepped away before she noticed him. He had no interest in making her uncomfortable. Still, the image stayed with him. For the first time, he began to understand how much effort existed behind the calm professionalism everyone admired. Meanwhile, Emily returned home to find Liam feeling much better. The sight of her son's smile immediately erased much of the stress she had been carrying. They spent the evening working on a school assignment together before sharing a simple dinner. Later, after Liam fell asleep, Emily sat by the window and looked out at the city lights. Life was still difficult. Bills still arrived. Unexpected problems still appeared. But she was moving forward, one step at a time. She had no idea that someone at the highest level of the company was quietly noticing not only her work ethic, but also the strength she demonstrated when nobody else was looking. And as Daniel drove home that night, he realized that what had begun as curiosity was slowly becoming admiration. The following week, Emily faced a new set of challenges that tested her resilience in ways she had not anticipated. Early Monday morning, she discovered that the cafe's delivery of fresh produce had been delayed due to a logistics error, leaving her short on essential ingredients for the breakfast menu. Determined not to disappoint her regular customers, she quickly improvised, substituting available items while maintaining quality and presentation. By mid-morning, the cafe began filling with the usual patrons, and Emily's attention shifted between taking orders, preparing meals, and supervising the young staff she trusted. Among the customers that day was Daniel, who had come in for a casual lunch, ostensibly to check on the cafe's operations as part of his philanthropic outreach to local small businesses. He observed from a corner table as Emily moved efficiently from counter to kitchen, her demeanor calm, yet focused despite the flurry of activity. When one of the servers spilled coffee on a tray, Emily handled the situation with a composed apology and immediate cleanup, ensuring no disruption to the diners. Daniel noted her skill at balancing multiple responsibilities seamlessly, as if her energy was inexhaustible. Around mid-afternoon, a particularly busy period began, with back-to-back customers arriving and a sudden demand for a breakfast platter special. Emily coordinated with her staff, delegating tasks while simultaneously managing orders herself, always mindful of quality and timing. Daniel could not help but be impressed. The woman he had watched navigate the office projects and school emergencies now commanded a public space with similar mastery. After the rush subsided, he approached her at the counter, offering assistance in a subtle, non-intrusive way by arranging tables and clearing minor spills, which allowed Emily a brief moment to breathe. They exchanged a few words about the menu and cafe operations, and Daniel could sense a mix of pride and fatigue in her tone. Yet Emily remained polite and welcoming, never showing stress or frustration openly. As the afternoon waned, the cafe quieted, giving Emily a chance to rest and review inventory. Daniel stayed nearby, occasionally observing, and noticed how she interacted with a young customer who asked questions about the food ingredients. Her explanations were patient and warm, showing genuine care beyond just business efficiency. When closing time arrived, Emily handled the final tasks with the same diligence she displayed all day, from reconciling the cash register to cleaning surfaces meticulously. Daniel offered to help carry some supplies to her car, and she accepted with a nod, grateful for the unexpected assistance. During the drive home later that evening, Emily reflected on the day, acknowledging the small victories and challenges she had managed alone or with minimal support. Daniel, on the other hand, considered how her character shone through not just in professional competence, but in the kindness and attentiveness she displayed in ordinary interactions. It was a quiet revelation for both of them. Admiration growing quietly, steadily, built not on spectacle, but on consistent, thoughtful action, and an unspoken connection forming from mutual respect and understanding of daily realities. Several days after their brief conversation at the cafe, Emily returned her attention fully to work and family life, believing that the interaction had been nothing more than a pleasant moment between two professionals. She had no reason to think otherwise. Daniel remained the chief executive officer of a large company, and she was simply one employee trying to build a better future for her son. Yet circumstances continued bringing their paths together in unexpected ways. One Friday afternoon, the company organized a community volunteer event at a local youth center. Participation was optional, but Emily immediately signed up. Supporting programs for children had always been important to her, especially since she understood how much positive encouragement could influence a young person's future. After finishing her regular work responsibilities, she arrived at the center ready to help. What she did not know was that Daniel would also be attending. The event began with simple activities. Employees helped organize educational materials, prepared activity stations, and assisted staff members with various projects. Emily naturally gravitated toward the children. Within minutes, she was laughing with them, answering questions, and helping them complete creative projects. Her patience seemed endless. Daniel noticed how easily the children trusted her. There was nothing forced about her kindness. She listened carefully, encouraged shy participants, and celebrated even the smallest accomplishments. At one point, a young boy became frustrated while working on a project and quietly moved away from the group. Many people might have continued with their own tasks, assuming someone else would help. Emily immediately noticed. She sat beside him, spoke gently, and encouraged him to try again. Within a few minutes, the child returned smiling. Daniel watched the entire interaction from across the room. The moment reminded him of his own childhood. Few people knew that he had been raised by a single mother who worked long hours to provide stability. She had taught him the value of perseverance, responsibility, and kindness. Looking at Emily, he saw many of the same qualities. Later that afternoon, the volunteers gathered for refreshments. For the first time, Daniel and Emily found themselves sitting at the same table. The conversation began casually, focused on the event and the children they had been helping. Gradually, however, it became more personal. Daniel asked what inspired her to volunteer. Emily smiled softly before mentioning Liam. She spoke about her son with obvious pride and affection. Every challenge she faced seemed worthwhile when she talked about him. Daniel listened carefully. For reasons he could not fully explain, he felt unusually comfortable sharing part of his own story. He spoke about his mother and the sacrifices she had made while raising him alone. Emily's expression changed immediately. For the first time, she understood that the successful executive she saw in company photographs had once faced struggles of his own. The conversation lasted only 20 minutes, yet both walked away thinking about it long afterward. Driving home that evening, Emily realized she had seen a side of Daniel few people probably knew existed. Meanwhile, Daniel found himself reflecting on something even more significant. What had begun months earlier as simple curiosity had evolved into genuine respect. He no longer admired Emily merely because of her determination. He admired the person she chose to be every single day. And for the first time, he began wondering whether their connection might eventually become something neither of them had expected. The weeks following the volunteer event brought subtle changes that neither Emily nor Daniel could ignore. Their conversations remained professional, yet there was now a level of comfort between them that had not existed before. Emily continued focusing on her responsibilities at work and at home, never expecting special treatment. If anything, she worked even harder. She wanted every achievement to be earned on merit alone. One Monday morning, she arrived at the office to discover that senior leadership had scheduled a review of the cross-department project she had helped coordinate. The meeting involved managers from several divisions, and Emily assumed she would simply provide supporting information if needed. Instead, shortly before the meeting began, her supervisor approached with unexpected news. He wanted her to present part of the project findings herself. For a moment, nervousness swept through her. Speaking in front of senior executives was far outside her comfort zone. Yet she nodded and accepted the responsibility. Throughout the morning, Emily carefully reviewed her notes. When the meeting finally began, she stood before a room filled with experienced professionals and shared her findings with clarity and confidence. She did not try to impress anyone with complicated language. She simply explained the facts, answered questions honestly, and demonstrated a deep understanding of the project. By the time she finished, the room was noticeably more engaged than when she had started. Daniel watched from the far end of the conference table. As others asked questions, he noticed something that impressed him even more than her preparation. When Emily did not know an answer, she admitted it directly and offered to research the information. She was confident without being arrogant, honest without appearing uncertain. After the meeting ended, several managers complimented her work. Emily thanked them politely before returning to her desk, believing the day would continue normally. An hour later, however, she received an invitation to Daniel's office. Her heart immediately began racing. She reviewed every recent project in her mind, wondering whether she had made a mistake. When she arrived, Daniel greeted her warmly and invited her to sit down. To her surprise, the conversation was not about a problem. Instead, he spoke about her growth within the company. He praised her professionalism, work ethic, and ability to earn the trust of colleagues across multiple departments. Emily listened quietly, unsure how to respond. Then Daniel shared something he had never told her before. He explained that he remembered the day she came for her interview. He described seeing her walk through the rain toward the building while everyone else hurried for shelter. Emily looked at him with surprise. She had never known anyone noticed. Daniel smiled softly. He told her that what caught his attention was not the rain itself. It was the determination she showed while facing it. Most people never realize that character often reveals itself during difficult moments. Emily felt unexpectedly emotional hearing those words. For years, she had faced challenges without recognition, simply doing what needed to be done for her son and her future. Before she left the office, Daniel informed her that leadership had approved a promotion opportunity. It would involve greater responsibility, additional training, and a meaningful increase in salary. Emily sat speechless for a moment. Then gratitude filled her eyes. As she drove home that evening, she could hardly wait to tell Liam the news. Yet, even more meaningful than the promotion was the realization that someone had truly seen the effort behind her journey. And for Daniel, watching her succeed felt strangely personal, as though her victory mattered almost as much to him as it did to her. Nearly a year passed, and the changes in Emily's life were visible in ways both large and small. The promotion had brought new responsibilities, but it had also provided the stability she had worked toward for so many years. The constant anxiety over every bill had eased. Liam was thriving at school, and their small apartment felt filled with a sense of possibility that had once seemed out of reach. Yet what Emily valued most was not the financial improvement. It was the confidence she had gained. For the first time in a very long while, she felt that her future was not defined by obstacles, but by opportunities. At work, she continued earning respect through the same qualities that had brought her this far. She remained dependable, thoughtful, and focused on helping others succeed. Her colleagues often sought her advice, and several newer employees viewed her as a mentor. Daniel watched all of this with quiet pride. Over the months, their friendship had deepened naturally. There had been no dramatic moments and no grand declarations. Instead, trust had grown through conversations, shared experiences, and mutual respect. One Saturday afternoon, the company hosted a family appreciation event at a local park. Employees were encouraged to bring loved ones, and Emily decided to attend with Liam. The weather could not have been more different from the day she first arrived for her interview. The sky was bright blue, and a gentle breeze moved through the trees. Families gathered around picnic tables while children played games across the grass. Liam immediately joined a group of other children and spent the afternoon laughing and running from one activity to another. Emily watched him with a smile. Seeing him happy had always been her greatest reward. A short distance away, Daniel greeted employees and their families. Eventually, he made his way over to where Emily was sitting. They spent the next hour talking about work, life, and the many unexpected turns that had brought them to this moment. At one point, Liam ran over holding a small prize he had won during a game. He excitedly showed it to both of them before racing off again. Daniel laughed and shook his head. "He has your determination," he said. Emily smiled. "Sometimes I think he has twice as much." As the afternoon continued, Daniel grew quiet for a moment. Then he looked out across the park and spoke softly. "Do you remember that rainy morning?" Emily immediately knew what he meant. She laughed gently. "How could I forget?" Daniel smiled. "I remember watching you walk toward the building. Most people would have turned around." Emily looked toward the sky. "I never felt like I had that option." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Daniel said something she would never forget. "I am glad you kept walking." Emotion filled